for the Indian context, and how the context in which this idea of integral humanism was given by Jacques Maritain in Europe. So even the comparison, the similarities and the differences between the ideas also came up in the plenary session. It was quite, in a thought-provoking way, was outlined by the expert panel that we had in the plenary session, Professor Padia, Professor Tim Shaw, and Mr. Combe. They shared their ideas, insights, and to take those ideas forward, we have, again, a very expert panel in this special keynote address, for which I would like to invite Dr. R.C. Sinha, who is who was a former chairperson at Indian Council of Philosophical Research, New Delhi, and also former head of the department at Department of Philosophy, Patna University, to come up on the dais. And to give the special keynote address, we have the Vice Chancellor of Jawaharlal Nehru University, Professor Santishree Pandit. May I request you, ma'am, to come up on the stage? And before we move forward with the lecture, the special keynote by Professor Santishree Pandit, I request our volunteers to please come and help for the felicitation. May I now request Professor Tej Pratap Singh to come and felicitate the Honorable Vice Chancellor of Jawaharlal Nehru University, and also Professor R.C. Sinha. Professor Tej Pratap Singh, we also request you to felicitate Professor R.C. Sinha. It is indeed an honor for us that Professor R.C. Sinha and Professor Santishree Pandit, they have agreed to share their thoughts in this special keynote panel. Right away, we begin with the proceedings, and I hand over the floor to Professor R.C. Sinha to carry forward the proceedings. Over to you, sir.
It is my privilege to honor this session in which a great, eminent scholar like Dr. Santishree Pandit is going to deliver you a lecture on integral humanism and making comparison with French philosopher Jacques Maritain. This is a new dash, and yesterday also we had a very serious, very sober deliberations, and naturally we expect something new will emerge from India in view of the prevailing conception which has been pointed out by some foreign delegate, that and since the world is, in the world there is eminent class of civilizations, so can this seminar give a strong message to the world community about confluence of civilizations? Can India make a new mark in this prevailing paradigms? Can this seminar will be able to shift the paradigm, that paradigm of the class of civilizations? Can we think practically that integral humanism is a new philosophy? It will serve the suffering humanity, and it may serve to just change the prevailing paradigm of Samuel P. Huntington. So with these words, I request the great scholar, the Vice Chancellor of JNU. Thank you very much.
Good morning to all of you. Sabko mera namaskar. I basically what to say, looking at, let me at the outset thank the BHU and especially Professor T.P. Singh, who's a good friend of mine, for inviting me, and as well as the India Foundation, respected chairperson, Professor R.C. Sinha, Dr. Sonu Trivedi, distinguished fellow, India Foundation, very eminent participants, students, and faculty, ladies and gentlemen. I basically want to, I think yesterday we had the comparison. Today I want to see whether, how would we relate integral humanism to the entire issue. One of the major issues that I have been raising as an academic myself is the issue of, can we create an alternative narrative to the hegemonic narrative in the social sciences? And will Deendayal Upadhyay's theory of integral humanism help us? And if it will, in what way? And I think young scholars also should think that we should have multiple narratives. There cannot be a single narrative. So I'm more worried about Bharatiya narrative architecture. So I will first dwell with that and then go on to how I would think we can relate the integral humanism of these two philosophers. I must thank Professor T.P. Singh and the India Foundation. I'm sorry I never read Jacques Maritain. I thank you for enlightening me, though I'm a student of political science. In Western political philosophy, when we read the French, what we read of the French, maybe Rousseau, and then we straight came to Raymond Aron, or even contemporary Sartre and others, but we never read him. Maybe that is also a bias that is there. The first is, I would like to say, the Nehruvian state and its policy of cancel culture was very systematic, that it marginalized and branded several Indian thinkers as communal, when they were just the opposite. One, many like Aurobindo, Lokmanya Tilak, Dr. Bhimrao, B.R. Ambedkar, Savarkar, and Deendayal Upadhyay were simply pushed out of the mainstream without any serious study. Now the time has come to correct the bias of the left and woke's narrative, and it is necessary to make a serious study of the contributions of these Bharatiya thinkers to help build the alternative narrative. These were the organic intellectuals who led to the counter-cultural revolution, if I have to put it in the Gramscian sense. Why am I contesting the Nehruvian state? Because the Nehruvian state ignored the masses or even the thinkers who were within our cultural traditions. Now take even somebody like B.R. Ambedkar, whom today is a messiah for the oppressed, was also cancelled. Do you know in 1952, the Congress worked overtime with the communists to defeat B.R. Ambedkar from the North Bombay constituency, which was a reserved constituency, and made some indescriptive person stand against him. And as you know, elections are, the best don't win many times. B.R. Ambedkar was defeated, and he is the architect of our constitution. He was a great feminist, great writer, and one of the greatest thinkers of this century. Or even take Savarkar. You call him communal, but he was an atheist. Do many one of you know that in Pune, he used to give lectures every Sunday, is there God? He was a scientific humanist. How do you call him communal? So was this not double-speak in the Orwellian sense? Meaning what Joseph Goebbels said, tell a lie and repeat it 10 times, it becomes the gospel truth. So my worry is why we as intellectuals have been peddling the same narrative. And here if you see India's rich political, and this is the reason that today scholars like Professor R.C. Sinha and others will tell you, there is a paucity of Indian political thought. We even go about saying that there is no Indian political thought. Is it out of ignorance or is it out of prejudice? So while figures like Chanakya and his Arthashastra, as well as Vidyaranya, most of you don't know Vidyaranya was the great, not only a spiritual thinker, but a strategist of modern India. Have any one of you heard about him? He built the Vijayanagar Empire, which ruled more than the Mughals. Mughals ruled only less than 200 years. The Vijayanagar Empire ruled for 400 years. Do any one of you in this part of the country do even know them? Know the names? This is the level of our ignorance, which is very, very unfortunate, as well as the ideas of Vivekananda or Dayananda Saraswati's Arya Samaj do garner recognition in the broader context of great thinkers and philosophers of India. They amount to a mere drop in the ocean. The asymmetry in discourse highlights a Western-centric focus within the academic and intellectual spheres, overshadowing the rich political philosophies that have emerged from India. And as all of you know, with Rakhi Gargi and the naval expeditions and the Oxford geologists, it has been proved that the Indian civilization has a continuity of 8,000 to 10,000 years. This is by carbon dating. And science doesn't tell you lies. So this whole Aryan invasion theory is a myth by Max Muller, who sits in Oxford, never visits India, and tells you, how can the Aryans invade us? We were an outward-looking civilization. 8 to 10,000 years, we were more civilized. Rakhi Gargi proves it. So does the underwater Dwaraka remains prove it, that we have, or even the Kiladi excavation in Tamil Nadu, by carbon dating. So what does this tell you? When the Europeans were picking up stones, we were already civilized. So these issues, archaeology has to become a very serious, holistic discipline. In the post-independence era, the discourse on political thought has largely dried up, with an irresistible focus on Nehruvian ideology that overshadows even Gandhian philosophy. This has led some to lament the poverty of Indian political theory. As the case may be, the independence struggle witnessed a revival of philosophical and political ideas drawing upon the ancient traditions of Sanatana Dharma. Undeniably, the philosophical contributions of figures such as Lala Lajpat Rai, Subhash Chandra Bose, Bal Gangadhar Tilak, Bipin Chandra Pal, Vinayak Damodar Savarkar, Bhartiyar, Golwalkar, Aurobindo, R.C. Majumdar, Shyama Prasad Mukherjee had a profound impact on society and the Indian psyche, playing a pivotal role in propelling the independence movement from the grassroots. And even Madan Mohan Malavya. I think even he is called communal. He has built such a great university. If he is communal, then everybody is communal. What made these thoughts particularly striking was their grounding in the reality of India and their deep-rooted connection to the historical traditions and cultural values of Bharat. Deendayal Upadhyay, 25th September 1916 to February 1st, 1968, he had a mysterious death, which till now nobody knows what happened, who pushed him out. Integral humanism stands out as a significant contribution that redefined Bharatiya traditions within the context of modern political systems, emphasizing the synthesis of traditional values with contemporary political thought. Indian integral humanism and Indian philosophy. The ideas encapsulate, here again I want to make another thing. Why am I differentiating? Methodologically, I think the Indian system of thought is very different from the Western. The Western is basically either or, what are called the binaries. If you're not with God, you're with Satan. In the Indian system, we have concentric circles. You can be this and that as well. Like take the figure of Ravana. Ravana was a great Shiva Bhakta. He wrote the Shivastandav Stotram, but he had one weakness. So he's an anti-hero. He is not a villain. And we are also a feminist civilization. The women who broke rules are the Pancha Pativratas, not the ones who went by the rules. They are the women who broke the rules. Show me a greater feminist than Draupadi. Feminism was not discovered by Simone de Beauvoir. Draupadi, according to me, is the first feminist, followed by Sita as the first single mother. And Goddess Saraswati redefined marriage and childbearing. Today, all of you say, I must have control over my body. She defined that. And Savitri, many people say she was timid, who went for her. No, she fought the god of death through her argument and tact. A brave woman. Why is our narratives just the opposite? Or finally, Kannagi. I come from Tamil Nadu. The first citizen activist. Where all the Sangam literature is as good as 10,000 years old. And the Oxford geologists have proved that the land masses were sold after the end of the Ice Age, disappeared like that of Dwaraka and others. And here we say all that is Indian, all that is Bharatiya is a myth. All that is Western is reality. I think everybody has their own shares of myths, as we do have. And here the ideas I encapsulated in the integral humanism are distilled from Deendayal Upadhyay's years of experience, particularly his work with the Jan Sangh and interactions with numerous individuals, mainly between 1959 and 1964. What emerged was a philosophy authentically Indian, woven into the fabric of national regeneration movements that aspired to shape the future of India as a nation, society, and humanity at large. Let me tell you another thing. The nationalism that is given by these thinkers is very different from Mazani's nationalism or others. Because in India, basically, we are culturally very pluralistic. We have 3,000 crores of gods to choose from. We are not of one God and one book. We are not a religion of revelation. We are rather a process. And each one of us, I can be an agnostic and still be a Hindu. Please remember that. Out of the Shatadarshan, 5 darshans do not believe in the existence of God except Vedanta. I think the philosophers will tell you better than I would. So let us remember, and even the dissenters have been celebrated. In other religions, the dissenters were beheaded. Buddha, the first dissenter to Bhimrao Ambedkar, are celebrated. So my question is, we need a different methodology. We need a very different understanding of this. And if we, the Indians, don't do it, then who else? Let me tell you, all the historians of JNU did not know Sanskrit. Romila Thapar knew no Sanskrit. How can you interpret the text without knowing the language? I somehow don't understand this. There would be a prejudice. For JNU, E.H. Carr said, facts are sacred. Interpretations can vary. For the Marxist historians, interpretations are sacred. Facts can vary. So please, I think you as students have to be extraordinarily careful. What emerged was a philosophy, I said, authentically Indian, woven into the fabric of national regeneration movement that aspired to shape the future of India as a nation, society and humanity at large. That is why we see the world in concentric circles. If I'm a nationalist, it's not that I'm not an internationalist. For us, each is a smaller identity to the other. All human beings have multiple identities. Only we project one or the other depending on circumstances and contexts. Though Upadhyay's ideas were truncated by his untimely passing, again like Shyama Prasad Mukherjee, his death is mysterious. They remarkably established the foundational parameters of thought that remain profoundly relevant even today. At the core, this philosophy advocates disavowing dialecticism and integration of the individual, society, creation, and the creator. These are not, and for us, please understand, the creator need not be a single book or a single God. We have a multiplicity. Each one of us can have our own gods, and there are people who create new ones as well. So these are not, so we have a religious democracy. So dissent is a normal part of our democratic tradition in religion. Merely philosophical values, but extend into the realm of politics. What I understood of Maritain is, I think he also tried to bring in that flexibility in the Christian church. The goals of a nation and its society must find their roots in the natural pursuits of dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. This requires a retrospective examination of the past, delving into the treasures of the philosophical, political, and social significance throughout Indian history, including the contributions of the likes of Adi Shankaracharya. In such a sense, Upadhyay's views emphasize the importance of civilization and cultural nationalism, asserting that these concepts predate the West's perspectives on the Westphalian school of statehood. Let me also say, many of us are taught that Magna Carta is the first document on democracy. I would like to contest it. 800 years before the Magna Carta, you have the Uttara Merur inscription in Tamil Nadu of the Cholas, where you have greater details of democratic decentralization and functioning. Why are we not advocating it? Just because something foreign looks better for us, please decolonize your mind. Disavowing dialecticalism. The ideas of the West, whether failing on the right or left, on the right or left, are rooted in binaries of us and them. They essentially revolve around differences and conflicts between the two opposing aspects, individual versus group, nature versus humans, and spirituality versus secularism. The purest nature of these ideas compels readers and practitioners to choose between two opposite sides, a concept that proves inapplicable when closely examining Indian history. Even the more recent debates on capitalism versus socialism and welfare versus utilitarian state are entwined in this binary thinking. In this significant work, Upadhyay urges us to rise above the individualistic and dialectical conclusions that most Western-oriented ideas propagate. It advocates for integrating and including these diverse themes and views into a syncretic form where the church and the state coexist harmoniously under the concept of dharma. Unfortunately, in India, we don't have the concept of a church. Each has their own different kshetras. And for us also, temples is not where we go and pray. It is a kshetrasthan. Temples are areas of energy. Temples are our sacred geography, which is a very different conception from the Abrahamic faith's view of what is a mosque or a church, or even between the single book they have and the idea of a single God, which we don't have. And in our dharmic way, the feminine gods are more powerful than the male. At least at the level of the spiritual, we have made the feminine absolutely powerful. Who has the most powerful portfolios in Indira's cabinet? Goddess Lakshmi, goddess of wealth, goddess Saraswati, goddess of knowledge. Michael Foucault will agree with me. Power and knowledge. And Durga, the goddess of power. And our male gods are named after their spouses. It's not vice versa. Sitapati, Lakshmipati, Umapati. There is no Patni. So please understand, we are a feminist civilization, at least at the spiritual, which is not there in the Abrahamic faiths. So dharma is very different. Dharma is not worried about control and order, which is there in the West when they talk about law and order. For us, chaos leads to the cosmos. Chaos leads to creativity. Even in science, we have spirituality. Take the greatest mathematician ever born, agreed even by Thomas Hardy, Srinivasa Ramanujam. He was a 12th standard failed. I'm not saying failed the 12th standard, but I'm saying the genius that he was. He has written algorithms that even today many people are unable to solve. Many people asked him, because of Vedic mathematics, his mother was a brilliant astrologer, and she used to make very minute mathematical calculations. They say he learnt it from her. And what did he say when Professor Hardy asked him in Cambridge, how do you get these algorithms? He said, Goddess Bhagavati comes at night and writes it on my tongue. So for us, the spiritual and the material, we do not see boundaries between the two. And here, if you see, the pursuit is for wholesomeness or holistic ideas, countering the ideas of alienation and separation, merging the experiences of the soul and the physical being. Now, what is the contemporary relevance? For me, that is very important. On either side, we have Ukraine, which is a proxy war, and then you have the Israel-Hamas war, where you have the fight against terrorism and the issue of identities coming up, and you have the wokes, when, Jewish women and children are raped, we are not ready even to mew like a cat or bleat like a lamb. But otherwise, we are ready to roar like lions. So I want to say women's rights cannot be sacrificed at the altar of your preferences. Contemporary relevance. Pursuing, becoming, and resembling the West in its purest form is a dangerous, predisposed inclination. And I think Deendayal Upadhyay ji taught us this, that be original, think, give an alternative. Even the West will welcome it. The threats of wokeness and unchecked liberal values are steering the West towards an abyss of unimaginable magnitude. Traditional values tied to family, kinship, marriage, and society are sacrificed on the altar of individualism, making the abandonment of personal responsibility towards self-gratification and identity politics. This has fostered conflicts and greater polarization, resulting in an increased tendency towards violence within societies. Upadhyay's integral humanism emerges as a solution to these pressing problems. His vision of merging nature with development and intertwining individual rights with responsibilities, with societal and national duties, provides an enlightening guide for leading a life that is not only meaningful but also beneficial to those around us. Crucially, we cannot and should not forsake our cultural and spiritual values for the pursuit of an atheistic interpretation of secularism. As we see, what often passes off for secularism in India is not the separation of religion and politics, but rather the lack of understanding and ignorance of religion itself. Thus, what holds significance is the positioning of humans in the grand scheme of things and how they should conduct themselves to foster a society and nation that is inclusive and forward-looking. The imperative is not for a conflict between nature and humans, but a quest for harmony. This is why all rivers, mountains, and organic elements around us are accorded the status of gods and goddesses. Ancient wisdom recognized their value and greatness in sustaining us, emphasizing that our actions cannot exist independently from surrounding. They must be harmonious and with our ecosystem, where material development is pursued respectfully alongside a quest for spirituality. So we are a nature-centric civilization as well. We believe in harmony. Even you see between genders, we have harmony and balance, the Ardhanarishwar. And also the West need not tell us about LGBT, we had Shikhandi. We celebrated it. The prevailing problems of alienation and disenchantment. In conclusion, I would only say that a seen to permeate every segment of human lives today are ominous signals that demand sincere and concerted efforts. The philosophy of integral humanism serves as the instrument to achieve that balance and harmony. A contemporary revolution in Indian consciousness is unfolding through realizing and acknowledging our rich past traditions and cultural wealth. The need is for us to disseminate such ideas and develop them further to set us on a path of enlightenment that is not solely materialistic or individualistic, but is spiritual and filled with ananda, that is joy. So I would see both, and if, as yesterday, some of the scholars enlightened us that we do have similarities in the West, this would be of great help to India. But I think first, I would request most Indian universities and research scholars to look into the wealth of the Bharatiya traditions, and please decolonize yourself. We are as good as any other civilization and scientifically also proved today. Thank you all. Thank you. Namaskar.
Thank you, ma'am, for your exemplary lecture. I'm sure it must have given enough food for thought for the scholars to deliberate upon. I now request Professor R.C. Sinha to give his remarks.
I must congratulate Dr. Santishree Pandit. I omit the middle name. That is convenient for me. No, that is a Nulipuriya, that may be, but it sounds well. Santishree, Dr. Santishree Pandit, for us it sounds well. So I must congratulate you. As a matter of fact, you have raised several questions. And it requires a great deliberation, and you have tried to meet some of the questions, observations, and you met it well. I won't go in detail because I am a student of philosophy, and most of the persons are here teachers of political science and some of the students of BHU from the Department of Political Science, as I gathered impression. And Dr. Upadhyay, when she is leading the show, so naturally the conclusion I think is right, that most of the teachers and students, they belong to the Department of Political Science. I would like to give a presidential remark is not very in-depth analysis. It is just a reflection. So I will reflect and I will try to clarify the concepts which I have understood. First of all, I go with the title, Integral Humanism, Perspectives of Deendayal Upadhyay and Jacques Maritain. So naturally, this seminar invites a methodology. This is based on some methodology that is a comparative methodology, and there are so many methodologies to understand historical methodology, analytic methodology, and comparative methodology. There are some other methodologies also. But here in this seminar, the method of comparative methodology is very much articulate. And yesterday, when we employ the comparative methodology, because we are going to compare two thinkers, Pandit Deendayal Upadhyay on the one hand and Jacques Maritain on the other hand. And naturally, the philosophy of integral humanism stipulated by Pandit Deendayal Upadhyay has got a different cultural setting, different tradition, and the concept or the philosophy of integral humanism stipulated by Jacques Maritain, it has a different cultural setting. Naturally, the comparative method is a method which stipulates creativity. So when we go for comparing Pandit Deendayal Upadhyay and Jacques Maritain, we are supposed to be creative one. And naturally this seminar suggests something, gives some message, a message of the creativity. So creativity does not mean only similarities. Yesterday also, somebody pointed out, some of the delegates, that we have talked a lot about similarities between Pandit Deendayal Upadhyay and Jacques Maritain. So there must be some differences in their narratives. And naturally, the one dominant difference which I would like to streamline, humanism is considered by Radhakrishnan as a substitute of religion. So in his book, An Idealist View of Life, those who are students of philosophy and even political science, they might have read that there are certain substitutes of religion. I don't say that religion has played a positive role or negative role, religion unites humanity as well as it divides humanity. And humanism can be conceived as substitute. That is a different issue. But the great contemporary Indian philosopher, he considers that humanism as a substitute of religion. And naturally, religion without God is no religion. Dharma can be with God and without God. But religion without God is not a religion. So that is the characteristics of the Semitic religion, that you must have a scripture, you must have a God, and you must have an institution. Whereas in Hinduism, because since we are heading to have some creative conclusion, so we must have a frank comparison of the different narratives. In Hinduism, we don't have a scripture is okay, but we have got different scriptures. Not one scripture, not like one book. We don't. So Hinduism loves pluralities. And it is not an institutional religion. A Hindu can be a good Hindu without visiting any temple, without having faith in any God. And even Buddhism, Jainism, they don't worship God, but they are very true religious men. Buddhists are very true. Buddhism. So that's why India is a land of multiplicities. It has multi-narratives. So I was talking about that this seminar must have a clear message. And for that, I think you rightly pointed out that without considering the class of civilizations, we cannot give a new message. This seminar is a very important one. It is going to give a message to the world. If integral humanism can give a message, because the class of civilizations means class due to the dogmatic nationality. I understand nationality in two ways. One is the dogmatic one, and the other is the enlightened one. Tolstoy pointed out in his War and Peace that this dogmatic nationality causes war. But the enlightened, we cannot live without nationality, but we must have enlightened nationality. So, to suggest someone that one should grow out of nationality is to suggest that one should escape out of his own body. It is not possible to get out of our nationality. So naturally, the concept of integral humanism is stipulated by Pandit Deendayal Upadhyay and Jacques Maritain, they differ. Though they have got certain, the one is naturally this secularism, humanism is very much leaning towards secularism. But Pandit Deendayal Upadhyay, being Advaitin, his humanism is based on Advaitism of Shankaracharya, as pointed out by the speaker also. So Shankaracharya, oh, I see. So I'm sorry. So in brief, I can say that integral Advaitism, whether it is conceived by Pandit Deendayal Upadhyay or whether it has been conceived by Jacques Maritain, but it opens a new dash, new dimension. And for the world, Huntington has also to rethink that a new paradigm has emerged in India. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor R.C. Sinha, for beautifully summarizing and philosophizing the concept also. And thank you, ma'am, for your captivating and very powerful speech. I'm sure it must have given new ideas for the scholars to deliberate upon and do further research. Without wasting any further time, I would like to request the volunteers to please help. We would like to hand over souvenirs to the speakers.